Hey, John.
Hey, Eric. How's it going tonight?
That's going good.
Well, that's good. That's better than the alternative.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, how was your weekend?
I had a good weekend. I had a discovery that I have inadvertently begun a sourdough starter. I,
Okay.
I my oldest and I have been making just very simple artisan bread. I don't know. There's all sorts of websites if you Google artisan bread in 5 minutes, or you know, 3 ingredient artisan bread. Anyways,
You were inspired by that ancient bread thing, my something fun
yes,
from a few weeks ago.
that's
I
right.
see. Okay. Okay.
The yeast. That's right. Well, so we had made some, and one of the recipes says, you make it, you let it rise, and then you stick it in the fridge for a week, and it'll kind of develop a little bit of a sour flavor. And I'm a big fan of sourdough bread. So we did that, and we forgot about it. I took her to school. I came back, and I'm like, the sourdough head, or the bread, the dough, had dropped. So it had lost all whatever. And I thought, oh, that's a bummer. And so I set it out, up and out of the way, thinking maybe it'll rise. Maybe I can get it to rise and I'll make some bread. Well, I had forgotten about it.
Again?
And again,
Okay.
it was up and out of the way. And like 3 days later, I'm like, oh crap, where's that bread? I need to go, or, the dough, did it rise again? It hadn't, but it had started to separate and it had started to liquefy, the liquid. And it
This
was
isn't the kind of
bubbling.
stuff you eat.
No, and it was bubbling and started to smell. But it smelled good. It smelled like sourdough bread. And so I started Googling around. I'm like, oh, how do you make sourdough starter? Well, basically, how you make sourdough starter is you put water and flour together and let it sit out and collect wild yeast, because there's yeast all around us, right?
Sure.
Well, I have, and so now I've thought I'm just going to roll with it. And it's been now another week later, and it's starting to get pretty ripe. So
And
I'm
you're
kind
going
of
to eat
excited.
this?
Well, I'm going to mix it in with. I'm going to take a small piece and mix it in with other flour and water and
Make
let it
sourdough.
rise and try to make actual sourdough bread. But I'm actually kind of excited about trying it now. So one of these
Well,
days I'm going to make
you'll
bread.
have to let me know how it works. I must say I've never done sourdough. I know the concept of the mother yeast or the mother bread, mother, I guess. But I've never done it myself. I'm a little dubious.
I I will bring some bread in after I do it, and we shall partake. We shall break bread together.
Okay, okay, okay. I have honey.
Hey, there we go.
It's a match. That's funny. Well, I actually took every Friday off every year at this around mid-August. There's a Kite Festival up in Long Beach, Washington. That the first time we went to it must have been 6 or 7 years ago now, and my boys were much younger, and we just were camping up there for the weekend and happened to go to the beach, and we're like, what's with all the big kites? and so we kind of stumbled into it, honestly. But ever since, we've gone back and just have really, really enjoyed it. And so we were back this weekend and spent 3 days with both of my boys, and then we brought a friend of my younger son's out, and it was when they're younger, they're like running around, running down to the water, flying kites themselves. This year was a pretty lazy year in that we had one of those little tents, that you pop up tent things, and it's very windy there. Obviously, that's why they fly kites. But so we put that up, we staked it, and then they pretty much sat in the tent and listened to a book on CD or book on Audible. No CD, duh. Sorry. while, while we watched the kite competitions, and then occasionally got up and wandered down to the fair food for either a tasty treat or something yummy. But it was a great, relaxing weekend.
What is a kite competition? Is it like I imagine kite fighting? My kite can fly higher than yours, or I'm gonna take my kite and attack yours. What is a? How do you compete with kite flying?
The vast majority of it is, I would say, technical skill for essentially doing a program to music. So you're flying the kite in particular patterns, and I don't know.
So it's like gymnastics at the Olympics, three signs go up with, 10, 9, 9.
Yeah, generally.
Kind of thing.
So there is kite fighting. That's certainly one of the things that everybody looks forward to every year, which is Rokoku, where they've got these, they must be 6-sided kites.
Right.
And there's teams of 3 people holding each line, and you're not allowed to let go of your line. All 3 people have to have at least one hand on the line of their kite at all times. And you're not allowed to touch with your hands the kites or the lines of any other players. So it's all about kind of basically intentionally tangling your line and like dragging another person's kite down. And the moment a kite touches the ground, they're out. But so oftentimes,
last kite flying wins.
Yeah, last kite flying wins. But these aren't like, it's not like they've got glass on the on the ropes or anything like that. The lines aren't getting cut. But anyway, that is very fun because you've got a bunch of teams running out there all trying to, kind of pull down each other's kite. And oftentimes, if you get 2 people,
is it one-on-one or is it just a big melee?
It's a melee. It's a melee. Melee. But one of them, they had 2, the last 2 that were still flying were having a really hard time. They were engaged. They also have timers where if they're not engaged, if any team's not engaged for 30 seconds, right, they get a 30-second warning, and then they have to be engaged within 30 seconds. So yeah, you can't kind of hide out in the corner and then wait till everybody else. Anyway, but if you're not aware of it, the other 2 general types of kites are sport kites, which are kind of fast triangular things that they can do tricks and stuff on, or quad kites, which are the crazy, insane, I can't even believe that the things they do with those kites are possible. So you should YouTube quad kites at some point. Maybe I'll try and find a link and put it in here. I feel like I might have said that last year. Anyway, quad kites are just crazy because they have quad, meaning 4 lines. So you've got 4 lines coming back to the kite, and then in your hands you're holding kind of I don't know what you call it, bars that are bent, and there's a line coming out the top and a line coming out the bottom. But these people can control the kites in just an amazing way. And so they've got singles and doubles, and then the most that you normally will see flying are like 6 people who are all kind of running these kites at the same time, doing crazy patterns in the air. Although on Saturday they tried to set a Guinness Book of Records for having 100 of these quad kites all flying up at the same time, and not just like all flying their kites in the square, but like flying a pattern with 100 kites, which is insane. I don't actually think they made it. I was kind of watching them, and I'm like, I don't think that really counts. So it was an incredible amount of confusion over there. And I mean, that's so many kites, so many lines in the air at the same time. But anyway, it's really fun. Even just as a spectator, I have successfully avoided spending. These kites are seriously like $300 a piece. You know who does not need a $300 kite? Me. So I have successfully avoided spending money so far, that kind of money, on these kites. But every year I'm like, that would be so fun. That looks so cool. And then I'm like, John, you'll use it like 3 times a year, if that. So
Right.
anyway, it's funny. All right. Now I will have good luck trying to cut out half of that. All right. Anyway, Kite Festival. Watch the YouTube link. I'll put in here for quad kites. They're awesome.
I will have to check it out. I don't remember seeing it last year. So
Yeah, maybe it wasn't my something fun. I assumed it was.
well,
We'll
I
see.
could just be getting old too and don't remember.
All right. You threw some things in follow-up.
So I threw 2 bits in follow-up, and they're not necessarily follow-up, but they kind of are follow-up-y. Like we've talked about Microsoft and open source.
Many times.
So the latest thing they're now open sourcing is their exFAT
me.
file system. What is it? exFAT? Pretty much every operating system you can format, your USB drive. I always format the USB drive as exFAT because it'll work in a Mac and Linux and Windows. Well, Microsoft has now open sourced it, so now anybody can, add it and use it. I don't know what the extra bits are, but
And exFAT is extended, I believe. Because, the first one was limited to, remember when you couldn't...
4 gig or something.
You couldn't format a partition for larger than 4 gigs. Yep.
And those days are long since passed.
Those days were long gone. Although I'll have a callback to that for my something fun. You just wait.
Oh. And then, not to be outdone, IBM, hold my chip. They have open sourced their PowerPC architecture, which I don't know if that really matters. And I remember back in the day, PowerPC was Apple versus Intel, with the PowerPC versus Apple versus PC was a chip-based thing, and then Apple said, well, we're just going to use Intel chips now. And things like the Sony PlayStation 3, the Nintendo Wii and Wii U, the GameCube, Microsoft's Xbox 360, there are a whole bunch of things that use the PowerPC, but it has slowly fallen out of favor. So I guess IBM just saw the writing on the wall there, like we're just, we're not going to make any more money on it. Maybe we can get some design wins and keep it fresh, and we'll just open source it and see if we can compete with other open sourcey type architectures. The one line out of the entire article that I thought was funny was, that IBM charged a lot of money for the PowerPC license. And so the quote in the article is, unofficially, IBM wanted to keep the ranks of its licensees small in order to reduce internecine competition. What does internecine mean?
Familial. Like siblings.
Okay.
I think.
So reduce the competition.
Make sure that's right.
You can cut that part out. But the best line in here, which it's more just the fact that just the wording was funny to me when I read it, was ARM. Everything runs ARM now, right? All your iPhones, your mobile phones are all running on ARM. So the additional quote here is, ARM, on the other hand, would seemingly welcome anyone who could fog a mirror and write a check. So, hey, IBM, guess who's winning now between PowerPC and ARM?
Well,
so
interesting. Android. So the actual definition of internecine is, well, the second one at least that I think is more appropriate, is relating to conflict within a group or organization. So
okay.
So I think that interesting. So I hadn't read this before, so this is interesting. But I think the comment in here that I would most like to see what happens is about the RISC-V aficionados.
Mm-hmm.
So RISC-V is the open source RISC chip that a friend of mine has played with it quite a bit, and is interesting for primarily because of the low or no licensing costs required for it. So if I guess what would be interesting will be if there's things in the Power PC that are worth pulling out. And if there's, can RISC-V and Power PC make a baby and have a RISC PC or something like that? I'll have to kind of keep my ear to the ground for articles on what or who picks this up and does anything with it.
Yeah. Anyways, those were my two follow-up-ish things that I was going to throw out there today.
Cool. All right. Well, that's nice. I do like open source. It's cool.
And then for my topic.
Okay. Just keep you rolling along like a steam train.
Because it's almost kind of follow-up-y already. My topic is actually kind of follow-up-y already. But this one is actually security related, unlike the other one there. The other two, I suppose. This one is Microsoft says that users who enable multi-factor authentication for their accounts will end up blocking 99.9% of automated attacks. I think we actually talked a little bit ago about multi-factor authentication, and Google had said, hey, if you add SMS 2FA to your Google account, you can block up to 99% of phishing and automated bots and stuff like that. So now Microsoft is coming out and saying the same thing. And Microsoft has over 300 million fraudulent sign-in attempts on their cloud services every day.
Oh, man.
And so they have data that says, you enable multi-factor authentication and it's going to block 99.9% of those unauthorized login attempts, even if your password is known.
I see.
So one of the comments that is in here, which I supposedly, not being a fan of passwords, I liked as well, was the guy said that the old advice of never use a password that has ever been seen in a breach or use really long passwords doesn't really matter and doesn't really help. And they list out a chart that they have, and it's hard to describe the chart. You just have to go to the article and read it. But it's a chart that basically lays out the type of attack, how often the type of attack is used by an attacker, what a user might be doing that would help the attacker, and most of them are being human.
Yeah, user assists attacker by being human.
Yes, right. So, and then does the fact that does your password, whether it's a good password or a bad password, matter as a result of this attack? So, for example, a phishing attempt, it's very frequently used. It's very easy for an attacker to use, and the user fails by being human because they'll click the phishing link or whatever, and you end up just giving the password to the attacker, whether it's a good one or not.
Right.
And keyloggers, extortion, there's a whole bunch of these where he's I should say his name. His name is Alex Weinert, who's the Group Program Manager for Identity, Security, and Protection at Microsoft. I hope that I'm pronouncing his name right. He's basically saying, look, passwords don't matter.
Great.
Because the attacks are getting your password in one way or another. Whether you've got a really good password or a really bad password, it doesn't matter in this different type of attack. So it was another stake in the, what do you say?
In the heart of single-factor authentication?
Yes, of just having a password to connect and authenticate to your account. So
yeah. The bottom of this article links to the Google article that we talked about in May.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great table. So yeah, brute force doesn't matter because they're.
Right.
Does the password manager? No, unless you're using an unusable password and therefore a password manager. Okay, so see, that's that.
Right.
that column should probably be yes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know, it's yes only if you're using a password you can't remember.
Right.
Which I mean I get it. But yeah, that's the funny. Most of the things are being human.
Yeah. He's got a stake in the ground, and he's trying to back up his stake with as much data as he can. So,
well, that's true. I mean,
generally, I'm on board.
Generally, yeah.
So
that's a nice table. I like that table.
So if you're out there and you have the opportunity or ability to use a two-factor, some kind of second factor beyond a password for whatever site, especially banks or things that if you lost that would be overly negative. I suppose if someone hacks your Twitter or Instagram account, it's an annoyance, but not the end of the world. Somebody hacks your bank account and takes all your money, that's probably a little bit worse. So look into two-factor authentication. Use it where you can.
300 million fraudulent sign-in attempts
every day. And 99.9% are blocked just by turning on some type of second factor.
It's impressive.
Anyways.
I like it. Nice topic.
I continue on my password. My rant against password crusade. All right. What you got, John?
Tilting it password windmills. My topic, I was going to have two, but this is the one that I felt like I had to have. So this was actually, let's see. This is about attacking SSL VPNs. Basically getting a root remote code execution without authentication, basically, which is particularly bad on a VPN, because the entire point of a VPN is to let you log on to your company remotely, create a secure tunnel, and then access internal resources. So by definition, the VPN server has to be exposed to the internet. So if you can break into one, and in particular if you can break into one without having to authenticate, many bad things. Many bad things. Very, very bad things.
Right, because the VPN sits in front of like you said, in front of your corporate network. It allows you to be at home, but behave as if you're at the office on the corporate network. Right. It's to protect the company from people just perusing the insides of the corporate network from the outside.
Yes, and most large companies these days still, I mean, even with the proliferation of web services, which are generally accessible outside the corporate network, still most companies have assets internally that you have to log on to the corporate network in order to reach.
Right.
And the way that you do that is with a VPN, and generally a SSL VPN these days. So there was one. So this link here is to the first link that we'll put in here is to the hackers that found the exploit and disclosed it. They also they did a talk at Blackhat a couple weeks ago, and the link to their slides is available on the Blackhat website. So somewhere about halfway through this discussion, I'll post the second link that's to the slides. But basically, the top three SSL VPNs, they have a chart at the top of this article. The top three VPNs account for more than 75% of the market share. And they also did a graph of which vendors have more CVEs exposed to them, and then so basically they're doing minor analysis to say, hey, who has the most deployments with the least vulnerabilities, because those are quote unquote the most secure ones. And
Right.
Anyway, this particular article is about the Fortigate SSL VPN, and anyway, I haven't read the. I think they said they're gonna do a follow up if it's been posted. I haven't seen it yet, but this was scary, honestly. I don't know if you had a chance to read this or not, but this was.
I just saw the Twitter chatter today online, but I didn't read the article.
Yeah, well, the article. So this article is actually from a couple of weeks ago. Honestly, it was from the 9th of August, and to be honest, too, the disclosures were in December of 2018. So disclosures to the vendor. We'll talk about that, I guess,
right,
at the end a little bit. But one of the other nice things, I guess, about VPNs is since they are exposed to the internet, you can use Showdown to figure out, hey, where are they? So there are more than 480,000 exposed. This particular one is most common in Asia and Europe. And they're identifying that by a particular URL that they have. So anyway, this was I can't detail everything in the article here, but there were a couple things I wanted to pull out. The first of which is that the web server was actually modified from Apache, but a version of Apache from 2002. So that's not good.
A little old.
That's not good. Yeah, one of the nice things about using open source software is like lots of bugs get fixed over time as if you keep up to date. Mm-hmm. If you don't, lots of bugs get disclosed. And so, who knows if they've been good about, pulling patches back in. But one of the things that they were able to do was to use the source from the version of Apache that they forked from to help speed up their analysis. And they've got a number of code snippets exposed in here, which presumably match with decompiling the source. So I don't know. So the second thing that they said in here was that in order to handle some of the URLs, they compiled their own Apache modules. And I can't throw too many stones at this. I know that we've done this ourselves. I know that we have Apache modules, but one of the things about writing your own Apache modules is you are your base. What an Apache module is, it's a plugin. It's a plugin to Apache, just like it sounds like, but it's binary code, and you're loaded into the Apache process space, and it's generally low-level code, so you're vulnerable to things like buffer overflows and other items if you haven't done a really good job of writing secure low-level code. So in general, modules are super duper fast, and so that's probably why they're doing that. Is you get a massive speed benefit from being from using a low-level language like that. And binary compiled modules, but there's also a trade-off that is made there. So the next big chunk of this article goes through some of the vulnerabilities they found and disclosed. And again, I won't go through all of them, but they have pre-auth arbitrary file reading by basically a string overflow, and so. The code is doing calling a native function sn printf and then appending something to it to the string. And so if you can cause the 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 buffer that's going to have in this case, the .json appended to it. You can control the whole thing and cause a buffer overflow. Anyway, they've got some cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, and this was a tricky one, pre-auth heap overflow. So anything pre-auth meaning so like that pre-auth arbitrary file reading. The whole point of pre-auth means you're just exposed on the internet. If I can do something to you before having authenticated, then I can pull files off. Pre-auth file reading means I can go read an arbitrary file off your disk, and I haven't authenticated to you. You're vulnerable to it just from sitting there.
Yep.
And they actually use that later on in a minute. So they've got some other things here. The scariest or the freakiest one of these was a magic backdoor. So
I love it whenever you code something and use the word magic.
It literally was a HTTP parameter called magic. And if the magic parameter had a particular value, which they've kind of blurred out here so that they're not telling people what the value is here. If the magic value has the right value, then you're in. So that's kind of a classic backdoor, I guess. If you have and who knows how this was introduced in the first place? I don't know. Anyway, the quote here from this paragraph is: according to our survey, there's still plenty of Fortigate SSL VPNs lack of patch. So not the cleanest English, but therefore, considering its severity, we will not disclose the magic string. However, this vulnerability has been reproduced by the researcher from Code White, blah, blah, blah. It is surely that other attackers will exploit this vulnerability soon. Please update your Fortigate ASAP. Yes, please. Anyway, post-auth heap overflow, and this is the one that they wind up using for the remote code execution that they talk about here. So then the last part of the article, they talk about 2 attempts to get essentially pre-auth remote code execution. And the first way they did it, they talked about doing it. They talked about a bunch of troubles, how they got stuck, and basically said, hey, if somebody can figure out a way to use this, let us know. We'd love to figure it out. But the way that they actually succeeded in it, it's a combination of the pre-auth file reading and the post-auth heap overflow. Because using the pre-auth file reading, they were able to basically read the session file from the HTTP server. And the session file has passwords in clear text, or for whatever reason. So that's bad. But being able to pre-auth pull a session file and then use the credentials that are in there to exploit a post-auth heap overflow means, effectively they're able to do it without having authentication a priori, which is bad.
Nice.
Yeah. Right. So then they go through a few more details of how they were able to find a vulnerability that they were able to exploit in SSL do handshake from fuzzing, actually, which is basically throwing a bunch of random values to try to cause a crash. So they get a crash, find out where that is, figure out in the function what's it doing, and then by looking at the function, try to figure out, where's the crash and how did it happen. And in this case, there's a structure that has a method, a pointer to a method, and if you and basically this function pointer's dereferenced without checking it, and so they're able to modify structure to try and get their own code to execute. Anyway, they go through some of the other details then about how they get the overflow to basically call some code that will generate a reverse shell for them, so that they basically get execution on the device. Because it's a little bit tricky. The SSL structure itself doesn't have enough space for the full command line to execute to get the shell, so they have to do a ROP attack to basically find what's called a ROP gadget, but basically a sequence of instructions that they're able to call that gets them to call their exact, essentially the bin sh. So anyway, it's kind of cool, kind of a good description here. And I thought this was a great article. I'll put in the link to the Blackhat slides as well. But anyway, this was the most interesting article I saw this week, I think, and a pretty severe vulnerability for that needs to be patched in May, basically, if you're running these servers, because that's when, like it said, the timeline was 11th of December 2018. All the CVEs that are linked in here were 2018 something or other, because they were reported in December. 19th of March, the fixes were scheduled, and the advisories went out on the 24th of May. So
cool.
Anyway, there you go. That was my article of the week.
I'm always amazed at how someone digs through and find, this is not my forte.
It's tricky. Honestly, it's not mine either. I mean, some of the guys downstairs. But it is cool to read
about. It's cool to read about. So
yeah. It's very, very cool. All right, well, check it out. How about something fun? You got something fun for me tonight?
Yeah. So my something fun was really fun until I realized there was an error.
Oh no!
So I mentioned before about how much I enjoy the Raspberry Pi. There was a post on Adafruit. Adafruit did a blog post about an Atomic Pi case. And the cool thing about the Atomic Pi case is it looks like the new Mac Pro with their cool spherical lattice design. And so you can 3D print this case for your Raspberry Pi, so says the Adafruit article. And then I thought, well, hold on a sec. When I looked through the pictures, that's a pretty massive heatsink on that Raspberry Pi. What are they doing? And so then I dug in and said, well, what is an Atomic Pi? And if you Google Atomic Pi, you find that it's yet another Intel Atom chip trying to compete with the Raspberry Pi. So then it was
really?
Now the massive heatsink makes sense. And so then I started, maybe the Atomic Pi might be something fun to get instead of, as an alternative to the Raspberry Pi. So I Googled around for the Atomic Pi.
Oh my gosh, that
Kickstarter.
heatsink is gigantic.
I know. So, and then I read an article on a review on Hackaday, and I'll just sum up the review so you don't. The end of the review says, "Should you get an Atomic Pi?" And the answer is, you shouldn't bother. You just wasted precious moments of your life reading this review. Sorry about that. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm afraid so. No, the answer is no. Well, I'm not allowed to call the Atomic Pi literal garbage because our editors insist on the technicality that it's surplus because they were purchased before they hit the trash cans. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the 3D printing designs that you can go get off of Thingiverse still, I think, are cool, and I still think that counts as my something fun, but you just can't go print one and throw a Raspberry Pi in it, which then makes me sad.
So you need to edit the design so that it fits a Pi.
Exactly. Because I think it's cool. I mean, if you look at it, that spherical lattice design that they showed off, I think just looks really cool. And it's kind of fun that it would be something you could easily 3D print. But it holds an Atomic Pi, not a Raspberry Pi, even though the Adafruit blog article says it holds a Raspberry Pi. It's not a Raspberry Pi. Anyways, that's my something fun.
Okay.
That wasn't
I'm sorry.
as fun
I'm
as it
reading
could
the
have
rest
been.
of that article, and I'm
know.
laughing my head off. Okay. Well,
All right.
I have just a small something fun, but I guess it's a small something fun that built into something a little bit bigger. So this past Sunday, August 25th. So we're recording this on Wednesday, the 28th, but last Sunday, the August 25th, in 1991, a young gentleman posted a little post out on Usenet that said, "Hello, everybody out there using Minix. I'm doing a free operating system. Just a hobby. Won't be big and professional like GNU. For 386 46 AT clones." This has been brewing since April, so this is 4 months later in August, and is starting to get ready. I'd like feedback. Do you see this?
I only did because I read I read it, so I do know where the punchline is going.
Yeah. Yep. So this is Linux. What became Linux? this is quote unquote, just a hobby, won't be big and professional like GNU.
Right.
Yeah. So I go Linus. He says the farther thing of this is I've currently ported Bash 1.08 and GCC 1.4 and things seem to work. Blah blah blah. Anyway, it's let's see. There was a couple other things in here that I thought were funny.
Well, there's one line.
Free. Oh, what?
Sorry, you skipped the one line that kind of portends the future. Is any suggestions are welcome, but I won't promise I'll implement them. He's kind of known for.
He didn't grow into that kind of a person, is what you're saying, huh?
Yeah, that was there from the beginning.
There from the beginning. That's right.
Anyway,
No,
sorry, I interrupted you.
It is the other line I was going to say was quote, "It is not portable, uses 386 task switching, and it'll probably never support anything other than AT hard disks, as that's all I have." Oh, anyway, I actually there was a whole thread here. Let's see. How do I see the rest of the thread at the moment? I pulled out two more quotes though from later down in the thread that I thought were funny. The first of which was, "I'd say that porting is impossible. It's mostly C, but most people wouldn't call what I write C. It uses every conceivable feature of the 386 I could find, as it was also a project to teach me about the 386.
That's how most of my projects get started. I want to learn about something.
I want to
start writing
learn
code.
about something.
Start writing code.
And then my last statement that I was kind of meaning to presage a little bit earlier was, as already mentioned, it uses a MMU for paging, not to disk yet, and segmentation. It's the segmentation that really makes it a 386 dependent. Every task has a 64 megabyte segment for code and data, max 64 tasks in 4 gigabytes. Quote, "Anybody who needs more than 64 megabytes per task, tough cookies." So when he's saying task, he's meaning process. So, so
Is this the Bill Gates equivalent?
well, exactly. And then, so I guess that wasn't my last quote because the last quote I pulled out there was, I'm afraid that's 64 tasks max. So, and one is used as the swapper. So no matter how small they are, they use the same 64 meg segment. Quote, fragmentation is evil. This is how it was handled, as the current opinion seems to be that 64 megs is more than enough, but 64 tasks might be a little crowded. I'll probably change the limits to be easily changed, 32 megabyte / 128 tasks, for example, with just a recompilation of the kernel. Just. Quote, and then here's the final money quote. I don't want to be on the machine when somebody is spawning greater than 64 processes, though.
That's my browser.
I've got one word for you, Linus. From 28 years in the future. Chrome.
Exactly. Sorry. You can cut out the part where I ruined your joke there, but yeah, that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Anyway, that's my something fun. 28 years ago this week.
28 years in technology years is forever. Because Linux basically owns...
Right? Yeah. Server world.
The server world.
For sure. And honestly, Windows is shipping a Linux kernel now. Just saying.
Tell somebody that 28 years in the past, or even 15 years in the past.
Right? Heck, 5 years ago. No, it's amazing. It's a brave new world.
Yep.
So
it's going to be fun.
Yeah. I forget if we've already talked about our early Linux days, but I first installed Linux in, I think it was 94. So
I stuck it out with FreeBSD forever.
Yeah.
That was my Linux flavor of choice.
It advanced really quickly those first couple of years.
Yep.
I mean, it was on, from the nerd / CS community, it was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So, fun.
All right, dude.
All right.
Show.
Let's do it. Sounds good. I will talk to you next week, Eric.
Yep. Have a good night, John.
Bye.
Bye.